Welcome to the DRF Sports Podcast, brought to you by DRF Sports. America's most trusted name in horse racing is now providing sports bettors with exclusive data, analytics, previews, videos, and expert picks on all major sports. Bet smarter and have more fun doing it. It's the DRF Sports Podcast, and now your host, Sheldon Alexander. Ready, set, bet.
This is the DRF Sports Podcast, episode 19. Make sure you like and follow wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Sheldon Alexander. A reminder, we do this twice a week. On Tuesdays, we recap the week that was, and on Fridays, it's the Picks Pod. Now, obviously, it's Friday, so we'll have a bunch of picks for you coming up. But on Tuesdays, we do sprinkle in some winners as well. My NBA picks are now 5-1 so far this season, and Matt's midweek football picks continue to be profitable. But speaking of some profits, the DRF Sports Sunday Scoop email newsletter had yet another winning week. Make that 8 straight for our guys. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you sign up for free at drf.com/sports to receive 2 weekly newsletters delivered to your email inbox every Friday and Sunday. Both are packed with powerful betting angles you don't want to miss. Again, drf.com/sports for all of the insight and analysis you need each and every day. Plus, of course, we go in depth on this podcast. But as mentioned, it's the Friday Picks Pod, so we've got a bunch in the NFL and NCAA coming up for you, including the Red Light Special, which has been on fire as of late. Plus, we also hit on 3 outright underdog winners last week. So let's see if we can have much of the same in store this time around. And to do so, Matt Russell joins us right about now. So after another wild Thursday night, which was billed as Mike White versus Carson Wentz and a 10-point spread, to me, this is exactly why the NFL rules, because there's really no reason to want to watch that game other than gambling and fantasy, which is really just another form of gambling anyways. But either way, I was on the Jets plus the points. But can I really be mad when things are down to their third stringer and then there's like backdoor covers going on? Like, what was that? Like, there was a point where I stopped myself to be like, what am I doing with my life right now?
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, I got a problem. I got a problem and I need some help. I think I'm addicted to the NFL. I think I'm addicted because there's reason for it, right? Because like it's the middle of the third quarter. I'm like, oh man, I am going to get to bed early. I'm going to be well rested for Friday, get all the stuff that I need to get done here, do this podcast with you. I'll have a ton of energy. It's going to be outstanding. And then it's just like, well, maybe one more drive. Well, okay, like maybe one more drive. And all right, last drive. This is the last drive. And of course, the Jets keep scoring. And by the way, like, are we positive that Zach Wilson isn't the 4th best quarterback on the New York Jets because Josh Johnson's out there and he's balling? I guess it's hard to tell because, what kind of defenses are the Colts really playing there? And yeah, it's electric, man. And like, it was the second game of the year or second Thursday night game of the year, I think, might have even been the third, that I didn't have a side in that game, right? We talked about how, the Jets looked appealing, and I would completely understand people taking the 10.5 points with the Jets. And like, you can't even really argue that as being necessarily a bad call, because as we always talk about when it comes to the NFL, it often just comes down to one play. Everybody's convinced the Jets are going to score that touchdown late, right? And after 3 interceptions that aren't interceptions, finally like a third or fourth one actually gets caught. And yes, the people who back the Jets are disappointed that they didn't get their mega backdoor. And the Colts was probably the right side, right? Like they were obviously the better team and everything went against the Jets. But like, isn't that kind of the point? Everything went against the Jets and the Colts were the much better team. And yet we were all convinced that the Jets were going to cover the spread by the time the clock was, running down. And like, yeah, I get that the Colts won and the Colts covered, but again, how do you lay double-digit points in the NFL and like expect it to go well? And again, it went well, completely understandable. Yeah, et cetera, et cetera. But like, man, like laying big time points in this league where stuff like yesterday can go down. like this is what we signed up for. And it's wild, man. It is wild.
No matter what's going on, it's still coming down to basically one play for the cover. And that's why the NFL continues to win. And I feel like the NFL, as we look into this upcoming Sunday's action, will also continue to win because there's so much news and information out there that affects the lines in a lot of different ways. So let's speed through a bunch of these games. We'll try to get to as many NFL games as possible. Got some NCAA games to go through as well at the end of the pod. But as mentioned, let's start right here. So
let's go.
You got the 7-1 Packers at the 4-4 Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs are 7.5-point favorites because there's a guy named Aaron Rodgers who is not playing for the Packers, who's out with COVID. If you want COVID talk, you can go a billion other places to find that, but we will be here to discuss this line right now and Jordan Love making his first regular season start of his career. I got to ask you this, Matt. A week after Aaron Rodgers put his team on his back to win that game against the Cards, can the rest of the Packers do the same for him? Because
that's right.
This spread here, woo.
So here's the thing. So you've got your antibodies and you've got your immune. No, we're not doing that. And so the difference between listen, fundamentally, right? Like he's gone from being able to carry a team on his back to not wanting to take a needle in the arm. And that's what's got us into this situation here, where again, we cannot have nice things, right? And I think I even mentioned it on Tuesday, like, oh, at least we get Green Bay and Kansas City, like full force here. And it's like, no, sorry, man, that's not allowed either. And okay,
so it's
let's
your
break
fault,
down this.
Is what you're saying.
It is my fault. I mean, it's always my fault, right? Like I can jinx anybody with the best of them. So, okay, the big question now is, what is Aaron Rodgers worth to the point spread, right? Now we've been down this road, but of course it matters who the replacement quarterback is, because back when it was Brett Hundley and, some other randoms, like over the course of the last decade or so, right? Like it always goes really, really badly. So what's the infrastructure here, right? And it's like, well, we saw the Aaron Rodgers and a bunch of guys off the street version of the infrastructure against the Arizona Cardinals, and like that worked out pretty well. And now it's the opposite. It's like, okay, we're getting all the support pieces back except for Aaron Rodgers, but Jordan Love has been around for a year and a half here. So in theory, he should be able to run the plays, right? And we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs defense, which again can be run on. We know this, right? So it's Aaron Jones, it's A.J. Dillon, all of that sort of thing. But as far as the line adjustment, we go from 1 up to 8.5 quickly. The plus 8.5 gets taken. It goes to 7.5. And now it's kind of toggled back and forth between 7 and 7.5. So, okay, think about it this way. Kansas City was just 10 to the Giants at home. So that we've already sort of decided here from a marketplace standpoint that the Jordan Love Packers are better than the Giants. I'm okay with that. And the thing is, if they're a 7.5-point favorite with my ratings and my numbers, it basically says that the Aaron Rodgers list Packers are as good as the Bears at this point, right? Because their rating becomes the same here. The Bears would be about a 7.5, 8-point favorite, according to my numbers. Again, the Chiefs would probably be a 10-point favorite, right? Just because that's what the market does. And then we would be betting on the Bears plus 10. Right. So that's where you have to sort of figure out, okay, in your own mind's eye, like, what do you think of the Packers now? And so you have to frame it like, is this team a little bit better than the Giants? Is this team where you would rate a team like the Bears, for example, who I have in sort of the low 40s as a team when they're at full strength? Now, last week, we get into a whole deal here about the Bears not being at full strength last week and, Justin Fields and all of that sort of thing. But again, the point is, like, do I look at the Packers right now like I look at the Bears? If this was a neutral field, I think I would still like the Packers because I think I would trust Jordan Love to be able to run the offense, not in the same dramatic way that Aaron Rodgers does, because Aaron Rodgers will take a 6.5-point underdog Packer team into Arizona and he'll win the game outright. Right? We're still not asking him to do that. We're just asking this game to be a 7-point game, to be a 6-5, 4-point game if you're backing the Packers. And as we saw last night on Thursday Night Football, as we just alluded to, you can get wildly outplayed and have a bunch of stuff go the wrong way for you, right? Like a safety getting injured, your quarterback getting injured, et cetera, and still be one play away from getting the back door here. And so, like, can Jordan Love produce that play? Of course he can. He might be able to get this done from a cover standpoint just by turning around and handing the ball off, and then occasionally faking doing that and throwing to a wide open receiver, just like it's going to include Devontae Adams, which everybody thought was a really big deal last week. And so as much as maybe that was or that wasn't, obviously I think it was from a, obviously Aaron Rodgers had 180 yards last week. Jordan Love can do 180 yards. Right? Like, it's not like Aaron Rodgers went into Arizona and just Rodgered it around there for 350 yards. No, like, he just game managed it himself. Now, can Jordan Love do that? I think the answer is yes. I certainly don't want anything to do with laying the points here with Kansas City, because I think the Packers can be better than the quote unquote Chicago Bears, can be better than the New York Giants as constructed on Monday, right? I start from a point of taking the points, and then you have to convince me why that's a bad idea. And I still don't really have a reason not to take the points here with the Packers.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the theme of this season in terms of gambling on the Kansas City Chiefs is that extra juiced up line. And here, with it being over 7 points, you could talk me into it if it was at 6.5. If it got under a touchdown, you could talk me into that. But as long as it's over a touchdown, I'm going to be leaning on the points, just because I can't trust Kansas City's offense right now. Like, you're struggling against the Giants. Like, there's a world in which Danny Dimes could have won that game on the road. That's where it's like, okay, I gotta start flipping and going the other way. But let's keep things moving here, as we got the 7-1 Cardinals at the 3-4 Niners. Niners are 1.5 point favorites. And I'm going to ask you what the line movement was here, because something just seems odd here. This number just feels weird. I get that the Cards have struggled against the Niners. I've seen it. I've watched it. I get it. But the Niners play better on the road. They're 0-3 at home this season. And I'm not going to be fooled by Jimmy G. I want to take the Cardinals here. And you're giving me points in the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I want to take the Cardinals.
I got to tell you, this is shaping up to be my biggest bet of the NFL season so far.
Wow. Okay.
I love the 49ers in this game. Love the 49ers in this game. I think how
are you doing this to me? Why are you doing
sorry,
this to
man.
Me right now?
I know. It's a wild ride, brother. It's a wild ride. But like, we talk about Shanahan, right? And how he's like a rich man's Cliff Kingsbury. Well, guess who's on the other side of the field? Actual Cliff Kingsbury. And I'm pretty sure I used that line 3-4 weeks ago when they played in Arizona. And it's what we do, right? We dig into the box scores. We figure out like, okay, well, which team was actually the better team in this game, that game, or whatever. And so there's a couple of different things here. So when you mentioned, the 49ers, the handicap going into that game 4 weeks ago was absolutely, they have a game plan, the personnel, et cetera, and have shown their ability to slow Kyler Murray down. Right. And they did it. They did it again. Right. But they're running Trey Lance out there. They've got the options going, but for whatever reason, they're having him throw the ball on high leverage downs. And the 4th down conversions were like 1 out of 5. And of course, Lance got stuffed at the 1 inch line, maybe, we still don't even really know for sure. And, that game ends 17-10. And we're sitting there going I kind of feel like San Francisco was not only the right side from a point spread standpoint, but probably should have won that game. And now we've got this game coming around here. And so before we even get into just the idea of these two teams sort of passing in the night here and going, the opposite direction, doesn't this line, you just mentioned it, is this familiar to you at all from a game on Sunday night last week, where we had the road exciting, favorite in the Dallas Cowboys giving 2.5 points. And all of a sudden there was some injury concern about the quarterback who wasn't practicing. And then in the middle of the week, the line flipped to 2.5. And we started to think ourselves what's going on with this line? And we thought, well, if Dak Prescott was out for this game, isn't the line going to shoot up more? And of course, it then does. And of course, obviously football happens, but that's not really the point as far as what we're talking about with the market is concerned here. But like, this is the exact situation. And we already know that Kyler Murray has an injury that we have been told takes 1 to 3 weeks to heal. And there is absolutely no reason for him, a guy driven in a lot of ways by the threat of his running ability and his legs in general, should be out there if he's not 100%. It's the exact same circumstance as Dak Prescott. And while you'd love to win every single game, that's just not really how the NFL works, right? And the Cardinals in a really good spot here with a pretty decent distance between them and anybody to sort of chase them in a sort of playoff position. Obviously, they are battling with the Rams for first place in the division, but like they still have another game against the Rams at home. They have a win already against the Rams. They can afford to lose this game. What they can't afford to do is put Kyler Murray in harm's way. I don't think Kyler Murray plays in this game. And I think the line move here and what's sort of confusing to some people indicates that. And so whether it's DeAndre Hopkins missing practice with a hamstring injury or Murray, who still has not practiced as of Friday morning, we'll see about, Friday afternoon. I'm just hoping that this news sort of waits until after Sunday afternoon so that the world doesn't come in on the Cardinals in contest play, as of course the deadline for the big contest in Las Vegas happens late Saturday afternoon. Because again, I love the 49ers. They get George Kittle back. They, obviously looked a lot better. Your boy Jimmy G looked a lot better, looked more commanding as far as like he's running the football a little bit, right? Which obviously is pretty important when we're talking about, are his legs healthy, et cetera, et cetera. And George Kittle's coming back. And that means not just great stuff for the passing game. It means really good things for the running game as well. And as well as I do, whether it's Jimmy G as the quarterback. And honestly, I kind of think now, and this is a little bit hot takey, I kind of think they're a better running team when he's the quarterback, because at least there's more of a threat in the passing game, because Trey Lance has proven, or I should say has not proven, that he can do that, right? He's just too inaccurate at this point. And we get excited about the idea of like Trey Lance as a threat in the backfield and drawing attention that way. But in the NFL, right, if you're playing close, 8 guys in the box or everybody's close to the line of scrimmage, like they have the speed defensively, any NFL team does, to figure out, oh, Trey Lance has the ball. Like, let's go run and tackle him. If you can beat a team deep and they have to play off, that's the thing that's going to open up the run game, right? And when you have a vicious blocker like George Kittle, the offensive line is as healthy as it has been all season. So we were worried about the offensive line when we were watching them against the Packers, for example. And it was like, oh God, Jimmy G's like under pressure every single time here. If he's not under pressure, guess who gets a lot better? Well, every quarterback for one, but certainly Jimmy G here. So like, this is a 2 ships passing in the night situation. I don't know how this is going to end as far as the season is concerned, but in this 1 week, I love San Francisco this week. And honestly, like the game needs to happen now, or I'm going to put more and more money into the 49ers here. And thankfully it's now -2, getting towards -2.5. So I can like Homer Simpson it a little bit here and back myself into the hedge. I love that reference because it's so true. But honestly, like, yeah, there was a couple of games last week at 12:30. I was sitting there, I'm like, this games need to start because I'm going to put more money on the Jets and I'm going to put more money on the Saints if these games don't start. Absolutely the case for me with the 49ers here. I think they roll the Cardinals this week.
Why are you doing this to me, man? Why are you doing this to me? This is the content that the people need, where the sad Niners fan comes in defeated, thinking about his team, trying to not be fooled by his team. And then here you come with the actual information.
The ebbs and flows. The ebbs and flows of the NFL, man.
Here we are. I'm back on the Jimmy G train. Okay. Here we are. I'm just going to move on before I get more depressed thinking about this. But 3-4 Falcons at the 5-2 Saints. Saints are 6.5-point favorites. And am I just supposed to ride with Trevor Siemian as a 6.5-point favorite?
No,
is that a thing
that's
supposed to happen?
No, and honestly, I don't think you're going. Well, I shouldn't say you're not going to have to, because I think Taysom Hill is probably going to start for the Saints here, right? Like, which, I mean, you can just replace him. Yeah, right. Like you can just replace him with Trevor Siemian in the sentence that you just said, and you'd be absolutely fair, right? Because then it becomes a, ground game, if you will, for the Saints, right? Everything kind of becomes more compacted. The range of opportunity and the range of options with the Saints here becomes a lot tighter. Now they might just run it down the Falcons' throats, and the Falcons might not be able to move the ball offensively, but I just don't see that necessarily being the case. I think the Falcons can move the ball against this Saints defense because Matt Ryan has had success. We talked last week, and one of the reasons we were led to the New Orleans Saints against the Bucs is because Tom Brady has shown that he has struggled against the Saints defense, right? And it's a matchup type thing. Matt Ryan, on the other hand, has shown that he's actually pretty decent against the Saints defense, right? 20 touchdowns to 11 interceptions on the road against the Saints. And we know, right, every year these games are pretty close, right? And obviously the Saints were very good last year and the Falcons weren't very good last year. So a little bit different in the absolute immediate history here. But I don't know that the Saints are that great, right? And you have this letdown spot here as well. And we were able to take advantage of that with the Jets, the aforementioned Jets, last week when nobody wanted anything to do with them against the Bengals, because the Bengals are riding high and everybody thought that this was some great team. And now that's the same, maybe not necessarily to the degree, I don't know, because of the Jameis injury, that people are like dying to bet the Saints here. But like the market certainly indicates that it's 6.5 points here. And like it's touching 7 where you can get a 7 for like -115 to -118. And I would absolutely do that. So play the Saints +7 for a couple of extra dollars here. I think that's about as far as the line goes here, because I think sharp money will absolutely come in. And sometimes if you put yourself in that mindset, you can kind of see what's happening in the marketplace. Like if you were looking to back the Falcons, why would you write this second, right? Like, why wouldn't you wait if you've seen this line go from 5.5 to 6 to 6.5 with Saints money kind of slowly building throughout the week? Like, why would you hop in now when it looks like it's going to get to 7? So absolutely grab the 7 there. Anything -120 or better. I think tough spot for the Saints. They probably still win this game, but I think it's just going to be a very close game, something under 20 points on either side, or at least in the low 20s. And once that becomes the case, we're talking about bounces, turnovers, just random stuff, right? How do we know that Taysom Hill is not going to have a crucial fumble carrying the ball as much as he's going to? And what if he goes out and it goes back to Trevor Siemian? Are we, again, like you said, are we expecting still big things out of Trevor Siemian again? Like, I certainly am not. And so, yeah, it's not fun backing Matt Ryan, but it's not fun backing Matt Ryan when he's at home as a 3.5 point favorite, right? Like we already know this. We've been doing this for 2 years. Like, that's a mess. This is the spot where you want to bet the Falcons when they are getting a fair amount of points and they can move the ball a little bit and just enough. They've got a really great field goal kicker. And I know that sort of sounds wacky, but like, listen, this game might be 15-12 with these two teams as currently constructed. So yes, 6.5 points is way too many. Grab the 7. Falcons +7, -120 or better is absolutely the play in this one.
You talked about the spots that certain teams are at. I'm wondering if this is a good spot for the next team we're going to talk about, which is the 4-3 Chargers, who are 1.5 favorites at Philadelphia against the Eagles. And I feel like the Chargers have been throwing people off the scent the last couple weeks, but am I missing something here? Because this seems odd. Only a 1.5 favorites. Like I know how you phrase it in terms of ratings. I don't have the Eagles and the Chargers in the same tax bracket, if I were to put it in that context. You know what I'm saying? This seems way too easy to me, and I know that can't be right. Like, what am I missing here?
Yeah, listen, this one's tricky because, there's a little, it's all under 3, right? Like the line starts at 2.5 and it goes down to 1 and then back to 1.5. And it's all just kind of a dead area, right? Like maybe that comes into play, but like the reality is probably not. And I think a lot of that movement is because of some concern about Justin Herbert's hand and like there's a potential injury business going on there. And of course then you immediately go into like the Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott zone where you're like, oh God, we're doing this over here with this game. I couldn't tell you positively that he's definitely going to play, but I think that he is going to play, and I would bet that this game accordingly. And listen, like congrats to the Eagles for that blowout against the Lions, but you're right. Like this line is too short in my opinion. Now I back off a little bit because I see how popular of a bet that the Chargers are this week. And so that sort of gets my radar up. So I'm not going to be playing them in like contests or have some significant bet in this game, but for just like a bet, one of like many bets that you and I place over the course of our lifetimes, let alone this season, I'm like, yeah, like I'll take the Chargers here. I'm obviously not that worried about the road home split situation here because by and large, the Chargers kind of always are playing on the road to a certain degree, right? So, after the Baltimore game, you can certainly see how people would be like, well, they're traveling basically, same distance, like, Philadelphia, not far from Baltimore. Like it sort of sets up in a way where the Chargers might have kind of a stinker of a game. But after 2 losses and the bye week, like the Chargers need to get it going here. Right. And this is a team that we have been high on before the season started. And it's funny how it works from a perception standpoint. We were way higher on the Chargers before the season than the market was, right? Their line was 8.5 for their win total. I'm like, that's way too low. Like, let's grab them for the division. Let's grab them for the AFC, et cetera, et cetera. And then like they have all this success to start the season. And then like the public perception shoots past where I was, because I was already high on them. And now I ended up sort of low on them because I ended up being like, guys, like you've gone too far here. You're going a little crazy, right? We're like a distance runner who's out and we're having a good run. And then everybody's just run past us. And we're like, guys, you're going to burn yourself out. We got 26.2 miles here that we need to run this race at. And so eventually, hopefully we end up catching and passing the market here on the Chargers again. And I don't know that we're going to do that anytime soon because people are backing the Chargers here at an alarming rate, literally alarming, because I am worried about the Chargers based on how many people are on the Chargers this week. But again, the line movement, I think, has more to do with the fact that people are just sort of buying and selling the injury report here on Herbert. I think he plays. I think the Chargers play one of their best games of the season, and I think they win this game. But yeah, like there is reason to be concerned just looking at the marketplace here. It's very strange. But listen, speaking of the Eagles and the Lions, that number went down to 3, towards the Lions last week, and that couldn't have been more wrong, right? I was happy to hop on the Eagles late once that thing went back down to -3. So the market by no means is the be all and end all of, where we're supposed to be betting. Give me the Chargers here on sort of a referendum on whether we should be worried about them going forward.
I like it. This game I'm very interested in as it's the 4-4 Broncos at the 6-1 Cowboys. Cowboys are 10-point favorites at home. And to me, just off top, we already discussed just double-digit spreads in general. And I guess Dak's back, cool. But one thing that we do love to do here is ride with my guy Teddy Two Gloves as an underdog. Yeah. And as 10-point underdogs, I mean, he might not win you the game, but I feel like I can always trust on Teddy Two Gloves to keep it close, no?
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, listen, we talked about this like a couple of Tuesdays ago when we thought he was, and for a brief moment, he was over a field goal underdog to the Browns, because we talked about how the Broncos had been favorites in every game up until that point. Now Mayfield goes out, and of course, we don't have to rehash. It was a great day in betting history as everybody won tickets on that Thursday night game, but that game closed -1. So heretofore, last week was the first time that they were meaningful. Last week was another time where they were meaningful favorites. And so we're still waiting for the Teddy Bridgewater spot here, where it's the first time that you're right, they get double digits. And this is the Teddy Bridgewater spot. Like, this is the, okay, nobody believes in us. He's going to somehow throw for like 300 plus yards. We're going to be like, Teddy's amazing. Like Jerry Jeudy's going to be scampering through the secondary, and same with Cortland Sutton. And like, maybe the run game is pretty good. And like, you're going to be like, what, how did this happen? Like, it's one of those deals where we're going to look back and we're going to be like, the Cowboys just won with Cooper Rush on the road against the Vikings. And like, now they lose to the Broncos. Now, I'm not saying they're going to lose necessarily, but like, third quarter, it's a tie game, like that type of deal. Right. And so whether it was against the Giants, when it was a tie game, when Daniel Jones got injured, or, again, the idea of Cooper Rush last week, like, or the Patriots before that, right? Like this is the Cowboys, as much as like they're an exciting team and they have all these brand name weapons and all of that sort of thing. Like, we still haven't seen them absolutely dust a team that can do things. Now, listen, I was on the Broncos last week. They won and covered. There was nothing enjoyable about watching that game and thinking that the Broncos were like a functional team, and the injury report isn't necessarily ideal for the Broncos. But it's not ideal either for the Cowboys. Every single wide receiver on that team missed practice or basically took a rehab day in practice yesterday. We don't know positively that Dak Prescott's, calf situation is going to hold up. And most importantly, Tyron Smith isn't going to play in this game. And he is arguably the most important thing on that offense, right? Like the left tackle, the protection for Dak. And like, it didn't become an issue last week because Danielle Hunter went out and the Vikings couldn't put pressure on Cooper Rush. But even with Von Miller shipped out to LA, and we'll see how much Von Miller has left, the reason that the Broncos can be comfortable doing that and walk into the locker room and look people in the eye is because they feel like they have replacements in the pass rush for Von Miller. Right. And Von Miller obviously missed the year last year. We don't know for sure, right? Like how many games does he have left? And nobody knows these players better than the team itself. And so if the team is okay with Von Miller getting traded, and I haven't heard anybody be like, oh man, like I can't believe we're giving up on the season or like blah, 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 because a lot of those guys, especially the pass rusher guys, they know that's more snaps for them. And you and I talk about it all the time, whether it's the D'Ernest Johnson effect or Cooper Rush or Mike White, right? Like when these guys get opportunities, they take them. And that's absolutely the case here with the Broncos pass rush. And if you have an opportunity to go against anybody other than Tyron Smith, you have to be thrilled about that opportunity. Now, a couple of corners are out as well, and you don't want that against the Dallas Cowboys. But again, fundamentally, we're talking about 10 points here with the GOAT big underdog quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. And like my ratings make this less than 10. It's closer to 7.5. So like, listen, we can all see why the Cowboys are getting credit in the marketplace. They always do, but like compare it to the Vikings game again, even with Cooper Rush, compare it to the Patriots game, compare it to the Giants game before Sean Glennon got himself involved. I don't even remember. Is that Mike Glennon, Sean Glennon? I think I screwed that up. Yeah. The long necked fellow, Mike Glennon gets involved. Who he played for? I believe he's a power forward for the Pelicans. He comes in. He's getting a lot of run now because Zion can't get himself figured out. Anyway, different sport. Sorry, but yeah, I mean, look at all the comparison type games here, right? Like it just doesn't feel right, and I'm not going to do it. I'm on the Broncos here plus 10, and happy to get all those points with Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, let's go. The 4-4 Browns at the 5-3 Bengals. Bengals are favored by 2.5 points at home, and the Browns are just a gong show right now. We discussed injured Baker Mayfield and what that meant to the Browns last week, and we saw that on full display. Then you have their star wide receiver's dad putting out videos of the quarterback missing him while he's wide open, and now that same star receiver has been essentially sent home by the team, which is like, there's got to be something else going on here, because if you're really sending home a dude because his dad posted something on social media, then Baker and that team really have issues. But I say all that to say this: I want nothing to do with the Cleveland Browns. And I get that this might be one of those spots where you're telling me you got to zig with the zag, you got to do this, I understand that. But I'm sitting here confidently saying that while it's under 3 points, and it's 2.5 for the Bengals, I can say that I'm comfortable to lay the 2.5 points with the Bengals.
Okay. You have to bet the Browns in this game.
I know you were going to say.
You have to bet the Browns in this game, like one way or another. You have to bet the Browns.
I knew you were going to say that. How did I know that?
Well, and that's why this podcast, frankly, this podcast is outstanding. No, that's why this podcast, it like works, right? And it's why we've been doing it for 2 years, because like you came in and you gave all of the reasons why people are going to be backing the Bengals, and they're going to assume that -2.5 is like some great deal under a field goal. Like this is outstanding. And I'm not here to tell you to grab the +2.5. I'm here to tell you to wait, get 3 if you have to pay an extra 5 cents, because like this game's absolutely going to overtime, right? It's going to be one of those deals where you bet the Browns +2.5, and it's the right side the whole way, but like the Bengals catch up late and they tie the game and it goes to overtime, and you're sitting there going like, I should have just taken the money line because I'm going to need the money line to sort of win here just to win my point spread bet. So yes, absolutely grab the 3 or bet the money line because that's just what's going to happen. I love my like elaborate predictions. Let's see if that works out.
Okay.
Here's the situation, right? We just talked about this with Denver and like who knows a player better than the team, right? And again, maybe Von Miller ends up playing incredibly well. And it's like, wow, I can't believe they gave him away for next to nothing. And they're paying all of his salary to like have a bunch of sacks for the Rams. I'm sure that's going to happen 1 or 2 games, but I don't know that he's going to survive the season. As far as the Browns are concerned, who knows Baker Mayfield and who knows Odell Beckham Jr. better than the Browns at this point? Like the team knows, right? Like they're looking around and like, okay, so he had a bunch of clips of bad Baker Mayfield throws. Like, where's Baker Mayfield's mom with a bunch of clips of Odell Beckham Jr. dropping footballs? Because every time I watch the Browns with with Odell Beckham Jr., he's absolutely dropping balls in every one of those games. And so the reality is, whether it's because the injuries have taken a toll on Beckham or whatever other reason, he's not a very good football player, right? Like he is not helping the Browns. He is using snaps that other wide receivers on that team are fully capable of taking advantage of. They made it to the second round of the playoffs and almost beat the Chiefs last year without Odell Beckham Jr., right? Like he was not around for that. Like they are fine without this guy. Like we already know the offense is predicated on the run game and being able to create open wide receivers. And yeah, Baker Mayfield's going to miss a couple here and there, but part of that is because the offensive line hasn't been healthy all season long, and it's still not even really that healthy, but we've seen the backup guys come in and be able to do work, i.e. the Thursday night football game. And yeah, that game last week was weird. Again, I don't know how the Steelers pull these games off from time to time, but they do, right? But like, I don't think anything less of necessarily of the Browns than I did before. And the reality is, I go back to my numbers and I go, okay, what should this line be? And I have Browns minus 0.8 on the road against Cincinnati, right? Like, so this is a coin flip game. That's the point, right? So whether it's 0.8 on one side, 0.8 on another side, or 1 on either side, whatever, it's a coin flip game. And you're getting plus 115 on the money line, right? So if we're doing coin flips and I'm getting plus 115 over a long period of time, I'm going to end up winning money. Fortunately, we only get 1 coin flip this weekend. So, it's either going to work out or it's not going to work out. Like that's the binary deal that we've signed up for. But I have to bet the Browns in this game. I don't have to take the 2.5, right? I will grab the 3. I've already grabbed the 3 from earlier on in the week. And that's really more the point as well, because this was 3. Yeah. Right? This line was 3 on open, and the market decided that the Browns needed to be bet, even though all of this other BS is going on in Cleveland. And like, because Odell Beckham Jr.'s dad is involved, it feels like it's a circus in the locker room. But if you actually walked into the locker room, do you really think it's that much of a circus? No, it's not. It's just a bunch of professionals in there moving on with their lives for a guy that they didn't have last season when they were a better football team last season. So like subtracting him means absolutely nothing to this team, to this point spread. But the value is created by the fact that some people might think that it does, right? And so, yeah, like this is a bet on the Browns all day, every day. Is it going to work out all day, every day? No, not necessarily. We want to put ourselves in the best possible position to win, and that means grabbing the +3. I imagine if this sentiment around the Bengals, which again, people still can't quit the Bengals, even though they just lost to the Jets after what we just saw from the Jets, right? It's like, oh, I still want the Bengals. It's like, okay, man, like you can have them. And if that means we get 3 points with the Cleveland Browns, that's absolutely where we have to be here. So whether it's +3 or the money line, I think those are your 2 choices. I'd play them both. I just think that like we've gone too far here with thinking that there's chaos in Cleveland. I think that was a pretty fortunate win for the Steelers last week. And I think that's indicative in this line movement.
Yeah, I think I'm just rolling with injured Baker. Injured Baker is going to try to do too much.
I convinced you?
We don't need you, Odell.
Did I convince you?
No,
you're not. You're rolling with the Bengals because of injured Baker. I see.
Because of injured Baker. Yeah. Injured Baker, I don't want anything to do with. Injured Baker looks terrible. And like he has to get tackled out of bounds and make sure he gets up and screams and points to the first. And it's like, get out of here, dude. Just get up and go back to the hut. Like it's just too much.
When you say injured Baker, I'm picturing like a guy like making a cake with like a sling on his arm. He's It's like, oh man, like this souffle. Do bakers make souffles? I don't even know. Yeah, like this custard's not going to work out because I don't have use of my left arm. But like, yeah, I guess it's more important if you're a quarterback.
Yes. I mean, I understand this is going to be the game where on Sunday, when I'm going through my picks to see where I went wrong, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't listen. And this is why my record was 8-7 last week instead of 9-6, right? These are the things that happen. And I mean, understand honestly, that.
Hopefully that's the case.
Hey, I hear you.
Because that's where I am. Go ahead.
I'm excited for the 1-7 Texans.
Yeah.
At the 1-7 Miami Dolphins. And for some reason, the Miami Dolphins are favored by 5.5 points. This game is alive and well in the Vegas zone, and Tyrod is back, baby. So I'm on the Texans and the points. Let's go. 5.5 points.
Yeah.
What? Let's go.
Yeah. And I like this is, and again, who knows how these games actually shake down. It's one Sunday, it's 60 minutes, it's an oblong football, all of those parameters that we always set. But this one was kind of easy to see, right? Like Tyrod was very close to playing last week. He wasn't all that far away from playing a couple of weeks ago, as far as like the murmurs of like, oh, is he going to come back? Right. Like we thought he might come back a couple of weeks back. And so this line opened 7 on the Texans. And I'm like, I'm going to jump on this right now. And it was one of those situations, like even the look ahead line before the game was even played this past Sunday, I'm like just hammering away and like maxing out the tiny limits that are in the look ahead line. I'm like, I got to get the 7 now for as small as, or as much as I possibly can. Like after, I can't risk this game even being competitive against the Rams and having this line drop. And sure enough, it opens back at 7. So I come in, I'm hammering it again. I'm like, again, it's a step away from the app type situation, man. Like you're hitting it because the line is going to go down. And there's no way that it's going up, because why on earth would the Dolphins ever be favored by 7 points, but like more than 7 points? Like it's just, that's not an existence that we live in. But at the same time, you're also like, it keeps saying that you're betting on the Texans. Right. It's like accepted bet on the Texans. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel great either. Right. Like that's not necessarily what I want to be. But as you said, we're very excited about this game because it's couple of 1-7 teams. But you know why we're also very excited about this game? Fired up. Yep. It's the red light special, everybody. It's the red light special. It's happening. This is the one, right? This is the one we've been waiting for, which is just an insane phrase to say again about the Houston Texans. The red light special, the TLC song, it comes on, they're playing. You're like, is this going to go well? Is this going to be a horror show? Who knows? I mean, that's the Texans right there in a nutshell, right? But the Tyrod Taylor version of the Texans has shown us enough through a game and a half earlier on in the season that we are all fully drinking the Kool-Aid. Hopefully this doesn't end up in a full-on, bad situation when you drink the Kool-Aid here. The red light special, Houston Texans here, they're going to win this game outright. And like, what about the Dolphins here has, attracted anybody to them from a market standpoint? Like, that's why this number's down to 5.5. The contest line in the large contest in Las Vegas is 4.5, which is an indicator that that's where we're headed. And that's where my numbers land, right? My numbers land Miami -4 in this game with Tyrod Taylor. And like, it could very well be lower than that, but like, I can't wrap my head around going any higher on the Texans than I absolutely already am. But there's a possibility that they could be better. Now, it would be nice if Laramie Tunsil came back. It does not look like that's going to be the case here, because once he went out, Davis Mills got a lot worse, right? It's funny how that works. Davis Mills looks okay against the Patriots. They're moving the ball. He's making good throws. He's protected. And then Tunsil goes out, who they gave a bunch, many of their first round picks that they've been handing out over the years, the Texans, they gave for Laramie Tunsil. Means he's a pretty good player. And he is. And so would be nice to have him back, but maybe that creates some value down the road here when he returns and it doesn't spark a 2.5, 3-point line move, but we'll put that in our back pocket for later. Hopefully it doesn't come to that from a market move standpoint, because the Texans win this week, which would be outstanding, because again, they are the red light special. They're absolutely still a play in the Vegas zone at +5.5, +4.5. That's absolutely fine. because the Texans are going to get their second win of the season. And this Dolphins team, again, they are 1-7, but their win is far less legitimate than even the Texans win was from week 1 with the Damian Harris fumble heard around the world that, again, I'm still thrilled about. I'm so glad Damian Harris fumbled that football. It won us a lot of money, but the reality is that was the difference between the Dolphins being 1-7 and 0-8. So we're talking about an 0-8 team here in sort of, an alternate universe getting points. I don't care that it's the Texans. I'm absolutely on the Texans. The red light special plus 4.5. If maybe not any lower than like 3.5, but yeah, they are very live to win this game this weekend.
Let's go. I like it. I like it a lot. Something else I enjoy is a Sunday nighter. But before we get to the Sunday nighter, a reminder to check out our guy, Scott Gramling, who is on fire as of late. His Sunday six-pack is 11-1. Again, an 11-1 record over the last 2 weeks. So make sure you head to drf.com/sports for all of the details and insights, but also all of Scott's game previews. So much insight and analysis there. So make sure you check it out. Again, that's drf.com/sports. But as mentioned, the Sunday nighter here, it's a 6-2 Titans at the 7-1 Rams. Rams are favored by 7 points. Now, of course, Derrick Henry not involved. Adrian Peterson off the streets is in. We talked about our guy McNichols, who I picked up in fantasy, but I'm going to stash him for a bit, see how this plays out. But if there is a running back, we discussed this on Tuesday, right? If there's a running back that matters, right, it would be Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
I will say, though, I don't like laying 7 points. I really don't. But I'm leaning here to lay the 7 points with the Rams, and I don't like it. And you're going to tell me why I shouldn't like it. I know.
No, I'll tell you this. I understand why you don't like it. But I think this is a spot where you got to do it. And I've made the bet at -7, paid a little extra for it. -114, I think was the price that I got. So, try to see if you can get that. Let me put it this way. Like, the Titans have kind of been pulling some stuff off here, right? In the last few weeks. And a lot of that was Derrick Henry fueled. Last week, it was a little bit less Derrick Henry fueled, but more like Colts pass defense fueled, which again, take it, we get the rare, the
hold on. That was Carson Wentz fueled, right? Like that.
Listen, it's always Carson Wentz fueled. I'm just saying, like, believe me, like I get it. Trust me, I get it. But like, at least from an offensive standpoint, right? It's like, well, is it just Derrick Henry? Or are we going to be able to move the ball through the air? And against the Colts, like, we just watched anybody that the Jets rolled out there last night be able to move the ball through the air. Now, again, garbage time, prevent defenses, all of that sort of thing. Like, I completely get it. Not the same circumstance, but yeah, like, the Titans can move the ball through the air. That's great. But like, part of that is because of the threat of Derrick Henry. And in an era where everybody's playing a 2 deep shell that keeps everything in front of them, the Titans are the one team that you kind of can't really do that with. Right. And if the Titans were, had Derrick Henry here and this line was 6.5, the way that it opened before Derrick Henry's injury became public information, I'd probably be on the Titans here, because the Rams are built defensively to allow you to do things in the run game. So I think your guy McNichols is actually a really good option this week in fantasy, because he's going to get the first opportunity. Like, how much would you hate that if Adrian Peterson straight off the street just walked in and got like 20 carries in this game when you've been the guy behind Derrick Henry? And it doesn't mean you're not very good. It just means you're not Derrick Henry, which is literally everyone. Like, Jeremy McNichols could be the second best running back in the league. We would just have no idea, because the best guy was in front of him. And like, what an odd situation that would be to have like the 2 best running backs in the league on your team. But like, this kind of stuff happens. Now, again, I'm being facetious in a lot of ways there, but he's going to get, I think, the run of the carries, and he's a good pass catcher. It's why he comes in on third downs, et cetera, et cetera. So the Titans are going to get a little looser here and throw the ball a lot more, which they're capable of doing. I completely understand that. The Rams here, though, like, they are going to take advantage of the Titans secondary, right? And like, we said that about the Chiefs, and for God, who knows why, but like, they couldn't pull that off. Carson Wentz could pull that off, because again, as much as he was throwing left-handed interceptions, they were immediately back down the field tying that game late, right? So Fundamentally here, yeah, like I grabbed the -7 on the Rams because this is just a really tough spot here for the Titans coming off of 3 really big wins and losing their best player. Now, there's some uncertainty on whether they might get him back, but now you go on the road against a Rams team who has been playing some of these JV matchups the last few weeks. Like, it's a good spot for them to beat up a team that might be a really good team, sort of big picture, but is in a tricky spot to play at the top end of their range, right? Like, you would expect the Titans, or you would forgive the Titans, I should say, if they played at the low end of their range. Whereas the Rams are due for a game where it's like, okay, let's play up to a competition here and be ready to go on a Sunday night, right? So yeah, this is, I know I'm loath to lay points. Like, we've talked about that basically every episode in the history of this podcast. But I will absolutely do that as long as I'm getting a flat 7 or close to a flat 7 here with the Rams on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it and I'm right there with you on the Rams, but my question for you here is the Rams laying 7 points. There's still survivor pools going on for a lot of people who didn't take the Bengals last week. But if we're looking at this week, are the Rams a survivor option if you still have the Rams at play? Or who else is out there if you've already used the Rams?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things, right? Like, the vast majority of people have already used the Rams. We used the Rams last week. So, like, the Rams basically don't exist anymore in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Back to the Future situation, right? They just evaporate on the photo, right? Their logo disappears from our lives. This is a tricky one this week because, you know, maybe you've used the Bills, probably you've used the Bills, probably you've used the Rams here. And if you're listening to this and you haven't made a pick yet, means you can't use the Colts, which a lot of people are going to use. For us, from a strategic standpoint, because we are in the large one in Las Vegas, we have to somewhat map out for a couple of considerations. We have a separate week on Christmas. We have a separate week on Thanksgiving, which means the Cowboys are not an option. Now, we just talked about it, Teddy Bridgewater as an underdog. I wouldn't necessarily want to take the Cowboys this week anyway.
Ooh.
Right? And we talked about the Atlanta Falcons keeping a pretty close game here with the New Orleans Saints. So I don't really want to use the Saints. They're also a team that at least is involved on Christmas Day. And week 12 in general is total chaos, which leaves us not that much left, right? Like, you're sitting there going like, man, you just ruled out all of the teams. Now people have gone, oh, what about Kansas City against Jordan Love? Well, again, what from Monday would have us want the Kansas City Chiefs, right? What indicator from Monday would be like, yeah, let's get on this Chiefs train like this. We should be absolutely riding like this, right? I don't care if you think Jordan Love's going to throw left-handed the entire game. Like, that's not something that I want to do. And if I took that team, let me put it this way. If I took the Chiefs in Survivor and they lost after the hint, after the clues that the Chiefs have given us, and after the Packers went on the road and won against Arizona, like, what other clues do you want that maybe avoiding that game is a good idea, right? Like, you would feel like an absolute stooge, which leaves our sneaky pick of the week for Survivor, the Baltimore Ravens. It's never going to get better for the Baltimore Ravens from a spot standpoint, right? Coming off a loss and the bye week, full focus for 2 weeks here, relative health, right? Like, they're never going to be fully healthy, but relative health coming up against a Vikings team who played on Sunday night, lost at home. Now, listen, the Vikings history is, you know, back them when you least expect it and fade them when you expect them to actually do something positive.
Yeah.
I think that actually happens next week. I'll tell you right now, we're going to be on the Vikings next week against the Chargers, because I think the Vikings get worked by the Ravens this week. And then everybody hops off the Vikings. And then when you least expect it, they win as like a 7-point underdog next week to the Chargers, something along those lines. This week, Harbaugh's 9-4 against the spread coming off of a bye. He's 4-0 against the spread with Lamar coming off of a bye. Now, we don't even need him to cover the spread here for Survivor. And we've watched this line tick up from 5.5 to 6, even some 6.5s will pop up. And listen, it's never going to get to 7 because, as we talk about, right, like, as soon as it even gets near 7, people are going to buy that +7. And I completely understand that, right? And that's why I'm not saying like Ravens -5.5, Ravens -6. You absolutely have to do it. But when it comes to just winning this game, this is a bigger game for the Ravens. You know, it's certainly a big game for the Vikings, but again, they just lost Danielle Hunter. right? Like this is a team in disarray. And like, what have we seen from the Vikings that should make us all that frightened of that team? Now, again, any given Sunday, they could absolutely pull that win out of their butts. And like, who knows, right? But the Ravens don't have another game on their schedule where they should win it to the degree of confidence that they should win this game, right? And you can say, well, their home games before this were 6.5-point favorites against the Bengals, lost, 6-point favorites, 7-point favorites against the Colts, probably absolutely should have lost that game, right? Like that gets a little bit dicey. And I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout as much as I sort of inferred that they might roll the Vikings this week, but like you got Justin Tucker, you got Harbaugh versus Zimmer, and you got Lamar, again, knock on wood, hopefully nothing happens to him. But like, these are guys who can pull things out of the fire late in a game. And that's what we want when we're talking Survivor here. I think it's a really great spot for the Ravens. It's the only spot for the Ravens. And if you're going to, whether you're an 18-week Survivor pool or a 20-week Survivor pool, if you're going to just sit there at the end of this whole thing and be like, yeah, we got 20 games right, we picked 20 teams, and you never use the Ravens, who are clearly a top 10 team and maybe a top 5 team, like that seems like a really strange thing, a really strange circumstance to have here. So this is a spot for the Ravens because, next week they go on the road to Miami, and as little as we like Miami, right? Like the point spread's going to be about the same as it is this week. So from a win probability standpoint, nothing really changes. So when there's a bunch of other stuff that we have to factor in when we want to win a Survivor pool and go a long way, these are sort of the quote unquote quote risks that we have to take, or the factors that we have to account for. And so the Ravens are my Survivor play this week.
All right. I like it. The 3-5 Bears on Monday night are at the 4-3 Steelers. Steelers are 6.5-point favorites. And I really just can't see a world in which I'm laying 6.5 points with the Steelers. I know we've seen their game before this season. And I know last week was a little different against the Browns for sure, right. But 6.5 points is just too much, even for, I see the world where their pass rush could be a problem for the young QB, but I don't know. I can't lay the 6.5 points with the Steelers.
Yeah, right. Like the pass rush was supposed to be a problem for Geno Smith, right? And if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. If you can almost lose to Geno Smith, you can almost lose to Justin Fields, right? Like that's absolutely in play here. I don't know that like the Bears are going to win this game, but I have certainly made a money line wager on the Bears to win this game from a value standpoint. Anything better than plus 200 is fine by me. And so I've waited, or I made that bet, but I'm waiting on the point spread because maybe this gets to 7. But I think the indicator for what the right side in this game is going to be is that we're not going to get 7. We're probably more likely to see this go down to 6, go down to 5.5. And it's not going to be because people are lining up around the block to bet the Bears. It's going to be because like big money is going to bet on the Bears if it hasn't already. So like knock on wood, maybe we get a full 7 points by the time Monday night rolls around, but 6.5 is fine by me. 6 is fine by me. This is going to be another one of those games. This game's very much like the Saints and the Falcons, where it's like field goals are going to be good, right? Like field goals are actually going to work. Like we talk about like coaches knowing what game they're in. This might be a field goals are good game. And like Mike Tomlin apparently decided, we don't need a field goal kicker last week because he tried to get Chris Boswell murdered for no reason. And he didn't realize that a field goal was good in that game against the Browns, right? They didn't need to go for, the 4th down. So they didn't need to fake any field goals, right? He didn't know what game he was in, and it almost cost him that game. It probably should have cost him that game. Now, I don't know what Boswell's health is necessarily. He was certainly like, the Tweety birds going around his head type of situation after getting absolutely leveled on a clean hit against the Browns last week. But again, like this is one where you're going to want some field goals here. This is going to mirror the Seahawks game from a couple of weeks ago. And I'm absolutely taking 6.5 points. Maybe we get the 7 and maybe we get a little lucky and it turns into a game like last year against Washington, right? You remember Washington on a prime time, one of those weird COVID situations, might've been a Tuesday night game, might've been a Wednesday afternoon. I can't even remember. But the point is, right? Like just because they're at home and it's prime time, like does not mean anything. Like the Steelers give these games away, and they certainly give these covers away all the time. It's the games against division rivals where they're an underdog. Like those are the games you want to be involved in the Steelers, because that's when they trick you into thinking that Mike Tomlin is some great coach. But like, this is a guy who like makes bad decisions all the time. And Matt Nagy is not necessarily a lockdown decision maker, but like we're getting 6.5 points with Matt Nagy. And I'm absolutely here for it on Monday with the Bears plus 6.5 or maybe 7 if we can get it.
Okay. Well, you know what I'm really here for? I'm here for the Campus Rush segment, which we talk a little NCAA football, and we always start off with the big boy games, and there's a bunch of big boy games this week. So let's kind of race through these here, because we got Auburn at Texas A&M, Texas A&M laying 4.5 points at home. What are your thoughts there, my dude?
Yeah, and this is one where we need to talk about just because, well, first of all, it's the only ranked unranked matchup. So as much as there's a couple of tester games here, it's not the greatest card, but of the top 5, of course, we had the college football playoff announcement, right? So there's a couple of top 5 teams here that also are in the mix. So I'll just crank through the 3 games of significance here. And yeah, like you said, we'll start with Auburn, Texas A&M. And we were all over Auburn last week, right? We had that peg. The Ole Miss schedule in the SEC caught up with them. And on any other day where these teams were sort of equal, if you will, from a health and, whatever standpoint, like Ole Miss was probably live to win that game. But like guys were getting peeled off that field left, right, and center. And that's going to happen when they played the schedule that they had. And so we were on Auburn -3, and that was a relatively comfortable victory because they were the fresher team. But now Auburn goes on the road to Texas A&M, who have had their own bye week. And it's not necessarily that Auburn's had a elaborate schedule, because again, they only played the one game since their own bye week. But it's just a team that plays differently on the road than they do at home. And Texas A&M, obviously a quality football team, they can stop the run, whereas Ole Miss, part of the handicap was that Ole Miss can't stop the run. And so that Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter were going to go nuts. That's what they did. I don't think those two guys go nuts against Texas A&M because Alabama wasn't able to go nuts against Texas A&M. And so for me here, this line, it's -4, -4.5. Like it feels like you should be backing Auburn in this game. I'm going to give them the points. I'm going to take Texas A&M in this game because I think they put up a pretty good showing. And like, this is that game where if there was ever another slip up to be had by Alabama, whoever wins this game can swoop in, whether it's Auburn actually knocking off Alabama in the Iron Bowl in a few weeks, or whether it's Texas A&M, who already has the tiebreaker, who's just sort of sitting there lingering. If Alabama trips up in this last month, maybe it is against Auburn, right? So this is sort of the de facto tiebreaker for who could swoop in here if Alabama happens to lose. And again, maybe it's Texas A&M beating Auburn and then Auburn beating Alabama. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case, but that's kind of the way this sort of shakes down here. So this is a very important game for Texas A&M, as it is for Auburn, but Texas A&M has been game planning for this game for 2 weeks now. They are the fresher team. They are the home team. I'm absolutely fine laying 4.5 points here with Texas A&M. And then the other 2 games that I want to talk about before we get loose here with the hurry up offense is Michigan State and Purdue. This is a really fascinating game because everybody's loving Michigan State, but they're only 3-point road favorites to Purdue here, right? And they have found themselves in the college football playoff top 4 here. It's all very exciting. But like the letdown effect, right? And that's what this line is expecting. And now I'm not saying bet Purdue, because there are certainly times, if you will, where Michigan State wins this game and covers a really short number. Yeah. But like, just be wary of like what's going on here with this number at Purdue +3 at home. They obviously have Iowa and Nebraska victories on their mantle. And so like, yeah, like I don't see this as a game that like I'm dying to bet on necessarily, but it is a really, really, it's really, really interesting based on how exciting and how excited everything in East Lansing was throughout this past week here. So that's a really interesting one. The sneaky one this week, I kind of have a feeling Washington beats Oregon, and there's no real rhyme nor reason for that because Washington is at a low point in the program. but they're getting 7 points at home against Oregon here, and against an Oregon team that hasn't been that convincing in games against, at home against Cal. Like, they gave up an alarming amount of points even in garbage time against Colorado. Like, this is just one where, like, Washington's had this game circled on the calendar. Like, they need a couple more wins as well to be in contention for the division title here. But like, this is that sneaky one here that Oregon loses a lot of the times. And sometimes it's Arizona State and sometimes it's Washington State. I think it might be this week against Washington. And then at that point, we'll get past this whole Ohio State versus Oregon, who should be ranked higher, because Oregon's going to have a trip up here and allow Ohio State to take that spot back, even though Ohio State lost to Oregon. So those two games are the most interesting ones on the board, but the best bet is Texas A&M -4.5.
I like it. And you can already hear the music starting to cook, because it can only mean one thing. It's that time of the week where we get to the hurry up offense, where it's just a rapid fire NCAA picks. My guy, Matt Russell, will race through a bunch of his picks here, and the music just kind of sets the pace, sets the tone for things. So as always, I'm just going to hand the ball off, step back, and let you do your thing, my dude.
Let's go. And we set the pace this week with a couple of wins in Maction, by the way. We got to roll that back. We were way the better team with Ohio. We got the outright win there. And then Kent State, we got a number there at -3. That was outstanding. We ended up catching that one relatively easily, even though that game took forever. We're back. 19 games on the board. We dialed it back to 15 last week. We're like, you know what? That's no fun. Let's go to 19 games. And oddly enough, nothing on Friday. There's a couple of relatively interesting games on Friday with Virginia Tech at BC, the red bandana game. Maybe worth a shot on BC there, but we're not making that an official play. Utah at Stanford, no McKee for Stanford, so probably Utah going to run in that game, but at -9, we're not going to play that either. So let's get into Saturday. We're going to start bright and early, though. No Friday, but you can get some rest, and you get fired up for an 11:30 kick on national television. Army and Air Force. You know we love our Air Force Falcons. Let's go -2.5 with Air Force. That's a team we've been backing a lot this year. Army gave up roughly $1 billion, literally all of the touchdowns to Wake Forest. I'm not backing that team until we see something defensively from them. We have seen at the very least something defensively from Air Force this season. So give me them, Air Force, -2.5. Liberty and Mississippi. We just talked about Ole Miss and like the beat up concept of them, right? Like, they're still beat up, and now they're playing a non-SEC team. Are they getting up for that? Meanwhile, their former head coach, Hugh Freeze, is bringing Liberty into town. Now, this Liberty team, a little bit disappointing this year. They're 7-2. They lost to UL Monroe. Like, that's gross. They lost a Friday night showcase game at Syracuse. That's gross. But Malik Willis is still a guy that you're going to hear from on the next level. They have an NFL quarterback to go along with Matt Corral as an NFL quarterback. Really fun game here. Again, Ole Miss super beat up. Liberty circled the calendar for this game for their coach. They're getting 10 points here. Absolutely on Liberty here to keep this one relatively tight. Maybe win outright. Ohio State and Nebraska. Ohio State, like, we're still waiting, right? Like last week, we talked about this on Tuesday. Everybody's telling us they're going to blow out Penn State. Like, don't take Penn State. We were on Penn State plus the 18.5 points here. Now Ohio State goes on the road to a Nebraska team. What else did we talk about last week? Why is Nebraska 7.5-point favorites against Purdue? Like, that was insane. Sure enough, they lose outright. But why were they 7.5 points a favorite to Purdue? Because they have this reputation of being able to play with the big boys. There's talent there that they can hang in. Well, this is it. Like, this is the perfect Ohio State, or the perfect Nebraska spot, with Ohio State coming to town. Let's take the 15 points with Nebraska, be stunned that this is somehow a tie game or a 7-point game in the third quarter, and then hope they can hang on for dear life here. Because, listen, again, Ohio State has not been impressive in games that didn't involve them playing Rutgers, right? And so we're all over Nebraska here plus 15, even though it's kind of gross. SMU and Memphis. SMU loses last week. We had them. They lose on a walk-off kickoff return for a touchdown. It was completely insane. How do you pick yourself up off the ground for that? You go to Memphis, and now you're 4.5-point favorites against a Memphis team that has not having a great season. But this is a circle the calendar type game here for Memphis. I'll take Memphis plus 4.5 points. We have now figured out that SMU is not a team of destiny. Speaking of team of destiny, Wake Forest, they're undefeated. They're undefeated, but like no one's even mentioning why, if they should be anywhere near the college football playoff. And I think the reason is They're probably not that good. North Carolina, a team that we thought might challenge, right? They might challenge Clemson for the ACC title, right? Oh, that didn't really go well for either of those teams, but they still have Sam Howell. They still have an offense. Unfortunately, they have a terrible defense. This is going to be a shootout here. So like the points don't really matter. It's only 2.5 anyway. I'm taking North Carolina to quote unquote upset Wake Forest. Obviously not an upset because they are the favorite, which is kind of telling you all you need to know about this. Miami, they're pulling off all of these upsets, double-digit underdog. They beat our Pitt Panthers and our guy Kenny Pickett last week. That was brutal. I don't know what we're doing as far as some of that refereeing and the spotting of the football and the fourth downs are concerned. Like, just get me out of here when it comes to that. But now Miami goes from double-digit underdogs in the last couple of games here to double-digit favorites against a Georgia Tech team that's at least been functional, right? Like they beat North Carolina, the aforementioned North Carolina Tar Heels and Sam Howell. So like, that's probably too many points. So I'm going to take Georgia Tech plus 10.5 here. Get this fired up a little quicker. Cal, speaking of teams that have no business being favored by double-digit points, like we've been on Cal even as a favorite in the past. But they're giving 12 points on the road to Arizona. Yeah, Arizona 0-8. Didn't want to bet on them all season long. It took me till November to do it, but I'm in on it. Let's take Arizona plus the 12 points. They probably should have beat Washington in their last home game 2 weeks ago. UL Monroe. Yeah, that's right. We're getting deep into the belt. The Sun Belt action, UL Monroe plus 3.5 against Texas State. This is a coin flip game, right? Two really bad teams, but UL Monroe shown a little more on offense than Texas State has the last couple of weeks. Give me UL Monroe plus 3.5. Speaking of plus 3.5, West Virginia. We nailed it last week. Sorry, Iowa. Ooh, feel bad about it. We're huge in Iowa. Iowa State loses outright on the road to West Virginia. Oklahoma State's going to do the same thing. It's the exact same circumstance, right? Where like defense oriented, like team that's probably a little overranked goes on the road to a West Virginia team who's got it cooking a little bit here with Jared Dagey, even though he threw a pick 6 last week. West Virginia plus 3.5. They're live to win that game outright, of course. Penn State, right? Pretty close with Ohio State. Hopefully that doesn't crush their hopes and dreams here because like they should really hammer Maryland this week. Maryland got a win last week, but that team stinks. Penn State minus 10 on the road. That is almost an unheard of thing for me to say. Minus 10 on the road, we're in. But we actually are this week with the Nittany Lions. South Alabama at Troy. More Fun Belt. Troy minus 4. I'm in fade South Alabama mode here, probably for the rest of the season. We'll see. Wisconsin at Rutgers. I am not laying the double digits on the road in this case with Wisconsin. We know what Wisconsin is, right? Run, run, run. We know what Greg Schiano and Rutgers wants to do. Run, 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 defend the run, all of that sort of thing. This is going to be a grimy game. You can have your 13 points. We'll take Rutgers plus 13.5. Maybe there would be some 14s come Saturday. That would be sweet. Mississippi State, a team that we've been backing a lot. I don't know if the market's figured out that Mississippi State's actually pretty good. They've had some tough losses. That sketchy one against Memphis. Like, they're pretty decent. Arkansas can't stop a nosebleed at this point, or at least the last we saw of them. Now, maybe coming off the bye, they tighten things up, and that's why they're 5-point favorites to Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State can win this game. Give me the 5 points with the Bulldogs. NC State and Florida State. Now, like, I'm hearing a lot of people going like, yeah, Florida State, they're back. Like, and by the way, like, RIP to everybody who had Florida State last week against Clemson. We didn't talk about this on Tuesday because, like, it's been talked about, but, like, probably the worst beat all in all that I've ever seen. Their side, the total was involved, complete horror show. I'm still not buying into Florida State just because it's gotten a little bit better in the last month or so. Give me NC State on the road here, -2, -2.5, anything under 3. Boise State, I don't know what the hell happened last week. Colorado State kicking field goals over and over and over again on goal-to-go situations. Like 20-yard field goals were going like hotcakes in Colorado last week, and they allow Boise State to come back from a 13-0 deficit because they refuse to have any balls whatsoever. Steve Adazio, that was brutal. I'm still not buying Boise. Again, congratulations for that win. Fresno State -5, absolutely a play for me this week. Tennessee and Kentucky. I think Kentucky gets it back this week. Tennessee has had that SEC schedule where it's been over and over and over. Now, yeah, like Kentucky lost last week, but back at home here, I think this is a spot to back Kentucky -1. Clemson and Louisville. Again, congrats to Clemson for their first cover of the season last week. Couldn't have been sketchier. Now they go on the road and have to deal with Malik Cunningham and the crew. Like, that offense can do just enough. Maybe they win this game, Clemson does, but I 4 points here. I'm not expecting to win by a touchdown. So give me Louisville +4. 3 more to go here. Well, really 2. I need to mention Texas and Ohio State. Do not bet on Texas. We cannot do it. We cannot do it. Absolutely, under no circumstances. They are off the list. But what we are going to do is we're going to tune in at halftime, find out that they're winning or that they are convincingly ahead of the point spread, and then we're going to live bet Iowa State. I've had enough of losing Texas in the second halves of games after they blow double-digit leads over and over and over. So that's just a helpful tip there. The Steve Sarkisian era is off the rails. It is flying down the road on absolute no tires whatsoever. 2 more games. USC and Arizona State. Arizona State is going to pound USC. Their entire offense was throw the ball to Drake London and hope for the best. Well, Drake London had a horrific injury last week, and now their offense is just hope for the best. And as much as we've, faded Arizona State in key game situations, this is one where Arizona State's going to be up for this game, and they are going to beat the brakes off of USC, and they're going to consider themselves, they're going to be very proud of themselves, and then they'll probably blow another game down the stretch. And then finally, don't watch the game. We're getting an extra hour of sleep this week, Shell, and I don't want you wasting it on a Mountain West game on the islands, but we are going to bet maybe my favorite bet of the week, Hawaii +7, maybe even some 7.5s out there on the island against San Diego State. We know Hawaii, weird stuff happens on the island late at night. They think that we're not paying attention because we're probably not. I'm going to be asleep. I'm getting that extra hour of sleep. You can't stop me. I'll wake up and I'll find out that Hawaii maybe won the game against San Diego State this week. Boom.
Wow. That was a rush. There's a
I think I blacked out
on there. There's a lot going on there for sure. Lots of picks. And, the people thank you for it because each and every week, it's a great opportunity to deep dive into the college football sched. But of course, if the people want more information from you, my dude, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, it's information, it's celebration, and it's commiseration. And fortunately, we've had a really good run here this season where we've been celebrating a lot, right? Like, I tweet everything that I write for The Score through @MRussAuthentic. That's my Twitter feed. Everything that comes through there, right? So last night, it's TNF, Thursday night props. It's Thursday night best bets. I said I didn't want anything to do with the game. So let's go first half with the Colts, right? Let's not deal with any perfunctory nonsense at the end and go Colts -6 in the first half. That cashes easily. I do a weekly Thursday night props where we do 1 yardage prop and we do touchdown that's absolutely going to happen, tongue in cheek. Nobody can predict that for sure. And a touchdown that's definitely not going to happen. That's a long shot touchdown. And last night, the touchdown that was absolutely going to happen, Nyheim Hines, first touchdown of the game. My guy cashes that +250 for us before I even really realized the game has started. I was sort of like half in a daze and like, oh, our guy scored. That's outstanding. Boom, cashed, and we can put that money back into play. The yardage one, and this feels awkward, right, was Mike White under. Thought he wasn't going to have a ton of success. He gets hurt. So sorry, Mike White. But like, that's the kind of stuff, right, that gets funneled through. It is my fault. I mean, normally I would get the guy hurt by taking his over. So in this, that's how well the season is going, where like I'm jinxing guys in like a quote unquote positive way for our betting purposes. So a lot more celebrating than commiserating these days. But again, you never know around the corner when the bad weeks are going to happen. Fortunately, the quote unquote bad weeks have been tiny losses and the good weeks have been big time wins. So let's just keep that going. We're crushing the college football midweek stuff, which is awesome just because you end up with a couple extra bucks in your account to start the weekend, which is always nice when you're not playing from a deficit. That's like, amazing because I think we're like 8 weeks in a row. Anyway, long way to say celebrating, commiserating, we're making fun of stuff. We're trying to have a good time. So follow along @MRussAuthentic over on Twitter.
Thanks, my dude. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Love it, brother. Thank you.
Thanks to Matt for coming on the pod. And if you want to follow me online, you can do so on Instagram @SheldonAlexander and on Twitter @ShellAlexander. Like and subscribe to the DRF Sports Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And for more on this brand new project for DRF Sports, if you're not familiar with the letters DRF, Well, daily racing form has been around for over 100 years, giving you all of the horse racing information, data, and analysis. But now they're taking over the entire sports world. So if you want coverage on every football game, as well as the NBA, MLB, and more, head to drf.com/sports for all of the details and insights, as the site has all of the data on every game, including offensive and defensive stats, betting angles, line movements, key injuries, head-to-head records, and team stats. The DRF data is what powers our power trends. So if you want to see which trends our analysts have selected, follow us on Instagram and on Twitter. If you want access to all of the raw data, go to drf.com/sports. That's where you get the usual previews. Plus, we go into the games in depth on this podcast. Basically, however you want your betting information, we've got you covered. That's all I got for now on this, the DRF Sports Podcast. Remember to catch us every Tuesday and Friday. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and until next time, see ya.
Thanks for listening to the DRF Sports Podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show. For more sports betting advice, go to drf.com/sports and follow on Twitter at @DRF_sports.